Hey, it's day 18 of my journey towards writing my first fantasy novel, and this is quite an extraordinary environment. But I was actually thinking of something amazing for my story right in the middle of doing my groceries here. So all day long, I've had writer's block, or maybe not writer's block, but just a lack of energy. My heating system in the house has broken down, and so it is just freezing, and I've been kind of like fighting the cold, and I just couldn't find the energy. I was shaking so much because it was so cold that I just couldn't focus on the story. So instead I did some research. I'm recording this on a Saturday, so I do have some spare time, and what I did was I watched a couple of videos about the early Middle Ages and about monastic life in the late Middle Ages. A very enlightening video. It was super helpful for me to visualize the world in which my story takes place. So obviously my story takes place in the early Middle Ages, so it was great to see some photos of excavations of what these monasteries looked like. Actually, they were quite smaller than the ones that I pictured in my mind. But anyway, I didn't really get any ideas for the rest of my story. Just one idea, and that is obviously, and I knew this from my visit to Ireland, there are a lot of holy wells in Ireland, and almost every religious site has one. And there are, like, these holy wells are really important. People would gather there to talk to one another, sometimes to party there. They would literally have like festivities around these holy wells. But obviously their main reason was religious, and people would go there and pray together. They would have like candle ceremonies. They would sometimes drink the water or wash themselves in it, all because of the healing powers. And I was thinking I should absolutely include that in my story, and that gave me the idea that maybe these holy wells can be places where our protagonists can heal after a battle, for instance, if they got injured. So that was one idea, and then plus the second idea was that maybe the big ritual with the codex could take place at one of those holy wells. And maybe, I don't know, I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't want to kind of use those holy wells for like magical purposes or anything, just because of their religious nature. So I want to respect that. But I do believe that since my story is taking place in Ireland, these holy wells are everywhere. I need to somehow bring them in. But what was the idea that came to me here while I was browsing the aisles for my groceries? It was this fantastic idea that I was thinking about meta stories, like a story inside a story, which is basically what my entire book is about. It's about storytelling, and then what happens in these stories is different from the reality of the story that I'm telling. But I was all of a sudden got a brainwave. What if these stories the story spells, the story mages can transport you to, obviously, like an imaginary world, the world of the story, but that means that they can also bring you to the past. Because if they read like a Bible passage, for instance, the people that are under the story spell all of a sudden can find themselves in, I don't know, Old Testament times, or in New Testament times, in the times of Jesus, to other places. But what if there are certain monks, certain scribes, that have visions, like that have the gift of prophecy, and they could actually see the future, and they wrote stories in the Codex, for instance, with depictions of what the future looked like in their imagination. But what if the visions were so weird sometimes that they just couldn't figure out what it represented? So, for instance, if a monk would get a vision of modern day Dublin and would see an airplane, that monk might actually think that it's a dragon, because he doesn't know what a machine is that can fly, and maybe he hears the roar of the engines, and then all of a sudden I can tell stories that take place in our times, but that feature dragons, that can feature all sorts of mythological creatures and strange things. So anyway, it's just the seed of an idea, but it suddenly gives me so much to work with. And to also, one of the other things that I was struggling with was, like, I would love for my main characters to also witness events in the history of Ireland that are in the future. And I just, like, how am I going to tell future stories? For instance, I would love to write an entire story around the Camino de Santiago. But the Camino was an invention from I think the 12th century. So it didn't even exist in the time of Tim and Elara. But what if, through the story spells, they can travel there? Because it just requires one of the scribes to have visionary gifts, which, you know, is a biblical thing. So I think I can get away with that theologically. But, oh my goodness, it was so cool. And then, finally, the idea, and then I need to go and get out of the store because I think they're going to close soon. And they may be wondering why this guy is talking to his phone in the middle of the supermarket. But the final idea that I had was, I already came up with this, well, what if these, you know, mythological animals that have their pet equivalents in the real world, so for instance the rainbow lion, right? What if at one point they figure out how to bring those creatures to the real world, so they can fight, they can help Tim and Elara in the final battle, for instance. So they need not their pet, because the cat and the puppies don't really represent any danger to the villains, but what if their mythological equivalents can come into the real world? So, and then I was like, wow, okay, another idea that maybe towards the end, when they're going after the evil mages, what if the master, for instance, of the evil mages is hiding inside the story? So how would that work? Well, what if it's the inverse of the animals being able to step out of the story spell into the real world? And what if the bad guys can actually step into the stories and disappear from the world of Tim and Elara? So that makes it possible to create like these quests of trying to find them inside imaginary worlds. And then I keep saying the final thing, but it's like, I wasn't thinking about my book, and all of a sudden I get this, I'm just hit by storytelling lightning. I don't know how that works, but anyway, so what if that is exactly why they need the Codex? What if this power to step into these story spells and materialize and dematerialize from this world, what if that is the power that the Codex grants? Because the Codex, being divinely inspired, can actually materialize things. That's one of the reasons that the Codex is so important for the monks, because they use the Codex to, for instance, let crops grow and to, I don't know, build things, but it's like whatever you read can become a reality. But what if it's also the opposite? It can also dematerialize. It's basically, the Codex gives you power over all dimensions, over space, over time. That is an incredible power that maybe the monks don't even realize, but the evil mages know that. And that's why they steal the Codex, and that's how they get away. Dude, I have enough ideas for 10 books. All right, that's what I wanted to share with you here. I'll now go and pay the bill. See you later. Thanks for watching.